that dotted line for center line going right through the middle of the space where our figure is. So again, the X would be where the figure is, and this is a very basic plot. Now what would happen, so I've told you guys that this is for one area. What if we needed to light somebody to the left and the right of our figure? What would we need to do if we wanted to light them in the same way that we've got that center figure lit? Like let's say if we put somebody over here closer to this audience section and we wanted a front light. We would put an X there, and then we'd probably need to add kind of what we could for equivalence of things lighting this area. We'd have to add lights that could light this area, right? So if I've got a front light here, where it says center front light, and my figure is here, but I have another person here and I want a front light for them, I'd probably have to add another front light here, right? Mm-hmm. So then I could light my person at center, and I could light my person over on stage right. If I had a person to the left, I would probably need to add a front light here, right? The idea with most of our lighting in the US, now European lighting especially, they love like huge, big, single source lighting for certain scenes. But more often than not, what we're trying to do here, especially in theater, is we like area control. Because we like to take certain areas out and bring certain areas up so we can really kind of control what we're focusing on. So the idea of, if I'm plotting a whole show for this space, is that I've got to look at how big my light is around that central figure, and I've got to light the whole stage with lights that will control those different areas. So I'm lighting somebody here at center, but I might not necessarily be lighting somebody downstage of them. So if I have a figure closer to the audience here, I might need another light out here. Now if I want to try to keep the angle the same, like if I can't keep the angle the same, then I probably have another light right next to the one that's lighting my center figure, right? So I'd put another light right up there. But one of the things you try to do as a lighting designer is kind of keep the angles consistent if you can. So one thing I might consider is putting a light a little lower. Like we have these lighting bridges that move across. We'll take a look at those a little bit later. But these slide across, but there's the possibility that you could hang kind of below. You can see there's lights down below it. If I'm trying to keep the angle the same from me here to my central figure, I might look at trying to add a lighting position that's a little lower. So one of the things you do when you're plotting a show is you take your basic angles and you try to make them work as best you can with your available lighting positions. And if your available lighting positions don't cut it, then you might try to add lighting positions. Does that make sense? That kind of thing? So that's basically what you're doing when you're doing a light plot, is you're taking that idea, that color key idea of where you imagine the light coming from, and you're trying to make a light plot that shows all the lights that you need to hang to make that happen for an entire space. That's what your light plot is. Okay? And again, this is what we'll be using for the first two lighting projects, so these channels apply for those two. All right, let me talk very briefly about paperwork. Taking a look at this still. If I am talking about an instrument schedule, basically, we have to generate spreadsheets for our electricians so they know where to hang things, how to color them efficiently, that kind of stuff. They'll use a light plot, but quite often they'll use paperwork as well. So the instrument schedule lists things by position. So, instrument schedule. So the first organizing thing is the position, or the hanging position. So for just ease's sake to generate paperwork here, we're going to say that this is pipe number 1 down along the bottom. This is pipe number 2 along the middle, and this is pipe number 3. So we'll kind of do an example of paperwork. So if we're generating an instrument schedule, pipe 1, if I could spell, pipe 1 would be our position, and then you would have unit would be next, unit number 1. You would have, how many units do we have there? 3?
3.
Okay. Unit number 2, and unit number 3. Okay? And basically, again, you're generating a spreadsheet of information. So So unit number 1, let's say we did our project we just did, and we put red in channel number 1. So we would have, and these next columns can be organized in different ways. So let's say we do channel, we do the dimmer. So this would be unit number. Channel, dimmer, color, and then any gobos. So let's say we put red in that channel number 1, because that's what we did. So we had red, or let's say it's an R19 or something. We picked out the specific color. Let's say we did a gobo. The gobos also have numbers just like the colors do. Usually we kind of help designate it. Sorry, just a few minutes left in class. We help designate it with a T because a lot of the same brands that make colors also make gobos. So I might say it's a Roscoe template and it's probably got some kind of 4-digit number like 5771. I'm totally making that up. And we know that from our plot here, that's channel 1, right? But what dimmer is it plugged into? In this space, our circuits, or the actual cords that we're plugged into, we are a dimmer per circuit theater. So the cord that it's plugged into is also the dimmer number it's in. So if I look at channel 1, and I look at that raceway, that's plugged into dimmer 96, unless I'm reading that upside down.
Nope. You only have 96 there.
Okay, so that's plugged into dimmer 96. Then you can go to channel 2. Let's say for our purposes that's no color right now. There's no gobo in that. It's channel 2. And then I would look and see what my electrician plugged into it. The electricians quite often will fill the dimmer numbers in when they go and they circuit your plot for you. Let's say, I can't quite tell, but I think it's plugged into 91. Possibly. But again, your electrician would plug that in and then they would fill that number in. Yeah. Okay? And then how about unit number 3? Well, that happens to be channel 3. But then you look over and you say, okay, my electrician plugged that into 85. And that is also, for our argument's sake, no color. But that's the idea of how you organize an instrument schedule. And again, this is very useful for electricians. Usually you've got all the information from your plot in there, except for the dimmer numbers. And that's what they fill in when they go and they plug things in for you. And one of the reasons this is handy is because when you have this little spreadsheet that has everything so concisely written down, is when we go to the lighting console, we can very easily type in these two numbers. We basically tell